And his opponent, fighting out of Las Vegas, Nevada. He is the fighting pride of the east side of Cincinnati, Ohio. Weighing 231 pounds, the reigning and defending AEW World Champion,
Stunt, and you're listening to All Elite Podcast.
I'm Mark Quinn, this is Isaiah Cassidy, and we are Private Party. And you're watching the All Elite Podcast.
Jungle Boy. You need to check out All Elite Podcast.
We are the Lucha Brothers, and you listen All Elite Podcast.
You know why?
Hey, this is Cole Cabana. Check out the All Elite Podcast. All Elite.
This is Sammy Guevara, the best ever. And you, yes, you, need to go check out All Elite Podcast.
What's up, man? It's the After Machine, the Wolverine, Mr. GMSI himself, a man with a huge effort arms, Brian Cage. You're watching the All Elite Podcast. Who better?
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite Podcast. As always, I'm your host, All Elite Andy, and I'm joined by my boy, Big Match AJ Fitzgerald. We are fresh off of another Full Gear pay-per-view, another AEW pay-per-view. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. That was a great show, man. I liked it top to bottom. I don't think there was anything on the card that... Okay, there was one thing on the card that I didn't like, but... really good show, and I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah, I think that this show had a lot of hype for it. I think we kind of hyped ourselves up for it going into it, but I think it lived up to the hype. This was a very good show from top to bottom. Even the buy-in match was pretty good. There's nothing to complain about there. I think they did a really good job from top to bottom. Like I said, the entire show was a lot of fun. We had spent a lot of time hyping it up. We had spent a lot of time getting excited about this one, but they definitely lived up to it, so...
Yeah, definitely.
There were no major debuts, no shocking, crazy swerve moments, I think, but I think that's all for the best. I think to an extent, we kind of discussed it before we went live, that to an extent, social media and the internet maybe played into us thinking there would be some major debut, more so than even AEW leading into it, but we could talk about that more as we just discussed the show as a whole. But overall, a great show. Maybe not the best AEW pay-per-view of all time, but close to it.
I mean, it's up there. Like, especially, the post-COVID stuff. It's hard to have, like, a really great pay-per-view without a huge audience.
Oh, yeah.
The only reason I think Climax was able to work this year is because most of their audience was allowed to be in there.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It is difficult to get that big event feel for a pay-per-view or anything without that whole audience there. And there were a couple moments where I actually felt that during the show, not even to an extent of like, man, I wish there was an audience here. It was more so like, dang, we're having this match, Young Bucks versus FTR, in front of 1,000 people when it should be going on in front of thousands of people.
Yeah, I felt that way around Kenny and like the opening of the show, Kenny and Hangman. I was like, God, this would be so much better with like a huge-ass crowd of people divided.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So let's just talk about the show from the top. Let's talk about the buy-in pre-show. Serena Deeb defending the NWA Women's Championship against Allison Kay in about 10.5 minutes. The more important, exciting part, at least for me, coming out of this match, Thunder Rosa comes out, stares down Serena Deeb, so obviously leading to another match between these two, continuing to emphasize the women in some way in AEW. I have always am down for that. So what do you think about this match?
Like you said, my biggest takeaway was Thunder Rosa coming out. I was really worried, like, not that we were going to lose her because she's not even ours, she's NWA's, but that she was just going to go to NXT and go away forever. Luckily, that's not happening, at least for the foreseeable future, and we're going to get a match with Deeb and Thunder Rosa, which we saw before was pretty good, so I can't imagine if they do it again that they're going to slack. And I assume they're going to do it in AEW. Why else would you hype it up in AEW? And where else would you do it? So I think this is a solid move by the NWA. A good partnership is happening here, especially in the division we need so much help with.
Yeah, and it kind of works for everyone in general. Works for Thunder Rosa, works for NWA, works for AEW. There's no telling for certain that Thunder Rosa will stick with the company, but who knows,
Mm-hmm.
But No, go ahead, AJ.
I was just gonna say the match itself, Allison Kay also, they announced was a free agent as of now. So I don't know if that means that Allison Kay sometime in the future is gonna be signing with the company, or if they're hinting at that. That'd be cool because she looked great tonight.
Yeah, I think that she did look great. I do agree that she would be another woman that would be solid just to bring into the fold. And again, I'm just happy to see that they have brought in a good amount of women. They're paying good attention to the women's division. And, it's very cool. People were speculating Thunder Rosa was bound for NXT, like you had talked about earlier. And so for AEW to still have her, at least for the time being, works out, like I said, for everyone. So the women's division is starting to get a little bit of depth to it, which we absolutely need. So I'm very excited about that. We open up the pay-per-view just with some video packages hyping up the entire show, and we have Don Callis joining the commentary team.
Yeah.
Which I initially thought maybe this is where we will get some type of debut, maybe an Impact relationship being involved here. Obviously, there's some relationship with Don Callis doing commentary, but no, we don't get that. Instead, we get Kenny picking up the win over Hangman in a 16.5-minute match. A very, very good match. AJ, what were your thoughts on this one?
Fantastic. Like, really, really good. My only gripe with it is it wasn't long enough, but I think it had a 20-minute time limit anyway, so it's not that they were going too short with what they were given. It's just, I want to see more. I want to see more of Kenny and Hangman. I feel like they could have done more. I feel like they kind of just gave a taste of this match. Like, I feel like what we were talking about before of them having 2-3 matches, like really good matches, I feel like they can do that. I don't know if, like, I feel like they're going to have more matches, and I feel like this is probably going to be like, and I mean this in not a bad way, but like the worst of the like 3 or 4 or however many they do.
It's the one that just sort of has to set the tone type of situation there, and it was a good match, and that's why I led into it that way, saying it was a good match, but not great in terms of. I think Kenny Omega's a genius, and he maybe learned this just in having such a fantastic match with Okada the first time, that when you have to follow it up with a second and third match, it can be very, very difficult. So maybe not give everything in the first one, because Kenny has had matches with Pac, Hangman, guys that he will face again down the line. Moxley, yeah, guys that he will face again down the line, and so they just gave us a taste of it to begin with. I think as the next year goes on, we're going to get those serious Kenny Omega matches, because he will really start to get into those secondary matches with people, and it's really going to be crazy. But I do agree, this one left a lot to be desired, but I'm in no way bitter about that. I totally understand the way that it works, and it makes a lot of sense, and it was a really good match in and of itself. I made a tweet about it. I said one reason these guys probably didn't give their all is because it was the opener, so they don't want to steal the entire show, Kenny and Hangman, but they still kind of did in terms of match quality. I think this was definitely the top 2 or 3 matches on the card. For me personally, probably my favorite match on the card, and they didn't even give it everything they had. So yeah, a good job here.
I don't know if it was my favorite on the card, but like you said, it's up there, like top 2, 3. It was fucking awesome. It's Kenny Omega and Hangman. It's what I wanted.
and for me, because I kind of went back to the finish a couple times because I was trying to get a gif of the finish for Twitter, and so because of that, I kind of took in the finish and the storytelling aspect of it that much more, of Hangman just moving his head away from Kenny to be able to hit the one-winged angel, Hangman literally getting his last-ditch opportunity to hit his finish and miss it. Well, Kenny ducks it. He's injured. Like, just everything that goes into that. Kenny finally putting him down with the knees and then going up for the one-winged angel. Like, the whole storytelling aspect of that finishing sequence just kind of sealed the deal for me with that match. And I think they did a great job. And obviously not having to turn anyone afterwards or during it. Still, the story is simply Kenny won, and they can do something like that down the line, but it's not how the feud has had to go at all. And that's something, again, we talk about how much I appreciate it, and I genuinely do. It's been a great thing for this feud where they've never had to turn on each other. There doesn't have to be a bad guy. It's just been very competitive. And at a point, maybe that makes one of them a bad guy. But for now, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to. I don't think it necessarily needs to either. Like, it's a competitive game that you're in. You know, it's wrestling. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to be able to tell the stories with the matches, and they've been able to do that with all their huge tag run, and now with their second singles match actually, but their first singles match in AEW, it's building towards a lot. Like you can feel it. Like you can feel like this is not the end of this. That like if
And it's
he loses to
probably like
Moxley,
6
it's
months
definitely
down
not
the
the end of
road.
it. Even if he does lose to Moxley, it's like and it could be like you said, 6 months down the road. Like I don't know how or where or when they're gonna get to it, but they're gonna get to it.
Absolutely, I agree with you there, and that's kind of the best part is they don't have to rush to it. When it comes, though, it will be very great and very entertaining. You sort of mentioned something about a game within all that you were saying. Let's talk about the AEW game because they had a promo for it. They will have an announcement for it on Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'm very excited for this. I think this is a very cool thing. I hope it is a full-fledged game where we get
I do too.
some type of gameplay video as well because that'll be cool. As a fan of wrestling games, we've talked about it before, is just how cool that'll be. So they, of course, hyped that up during the show. And then we follow that with Orange Cassidy picking up a win over John Silver. Did you really take a whole lot from this match or no?
Nah, dude. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't bad or anything, and John Silver looked like a stud because he was wrestling somebody who wasn't 10 times bigger than him. But other than that, like, no, not really.
Yeah, I think that commentary did something for Silver near the end where they were really putting him over.
Yeah.
Talking about how good he was, how he should maybe get away from the Dark Order, which is very interesting, and maybe that's something they really are planning to do now because of how charismatic and entertaining he has been. He might be a more natural fit as a comedic babyface, so we'll see. Again, I didn't take a whole lot from this match either. They were in a tough position following Kenny and Hangman, so I think overall they definitely delivered for the position they were put in, but it wasn't necessarily like a home run or anything.
I feel like if this was on the pre-show, I would have appreciated it more.
And I agree with you there, but to an extent, the way that the card was set up, I can't really be too mad about it, you know?
No, I'm not mad about it, but I'm just saying, if it was a pre-show match like it originally was, like, I probably would have watched it on the pre-show and been like, oh, damn, that was a good match.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. They follow that up with a hype video for Cody versus Darby, and then we get Darby Allin picking up the championship victory over Cody Rhodes in 17 minutes. What did you think about the match before we even get to the post-match? Because this was the first big crazy moment.
Dude, first of all, before we get to the post-match, my ass, Darby Allin won, my boy. No, I gotta be happy about that. I'm so fucking thrilled. I picked Darby and I said I wanted to change it. Remember? I was like, I want to change that now because you had convinced me so hard Cody was gonna win.
I told you to keep it.
And you did, and I kept it. And I was there. I was thinking about it, and I like kind of forgot, and which makes me feel like an asshole. But I was there for the first Cody Darby match, and I was like, damn, I feel like kind of connected to this feud. Like they've been doing this. They've had a certain like what 3 matches in total, and this was number 3, and Darby finally gets his win. And I was like, this is fucking like going back from 2019 to the show that you bought me tickets for. That like I was like, god damn, going back all the way from 2019. We're in 2020 in November, and Darby gets his win.
And it was so surprising, too. They did it with the roll-up, which makes a ton of sense based upon just the booking and all of that. I thought the match
the psychology
itself was,
and everything, too.
Yeah, I thought the match itself was really, really good, really entertaining. It did catch me by surprise for Darby to win because it wasn't necessarily something I was anticipating. But the fact that it happened, I'm not mad about it. It came in a solid way. Cody sold it perfectly. And post-match, they did a good job with it, too, just in terms of Cody handing him the belt and celebrating with him shortly. It was a surprise, but it was done so well that I'm really excited about it for Darby because I think it says a lot for what he's got coming for him. And
definitely.
They said it in the promo, too. Like, if he loses this one, is he just one of those guys who can never really break through the glass ceiling? That victory there kind of shows maybe he's not, so...
Yeah, like I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's the face, quote unquote, of TNT because he's the TNT champion. So I'm fine with that, Darby Allin. But we do have to talk about what I realized you mean now when you said the post match because I had forgotten. I blocked it out because I was like, you ruined it.
No, man. Of course, we have Taz come out. They cut a promo on Darby. He's sort of distracting Cody Rhodes and Darby because obviously Ricky Starks and Brian Cage attack them from behind. Cage at one point throws Darby through a piece of the Full Gear set. They go to break his arm with a car door, but Will Hobbs comes out for the save. I made a tweet about this that I love the slow burn that we have going for Will Hobbs, where he's not being pushed and immediately in our face or shoved down our throat, or maybe even not getting a ton of wins on Dark or anything, but just slowly continuing to make these saves, getting introduced into this story in a semi-natural way. And I think he's going to have a lot to show over the next month or so and have a good place on the next card for a big pay-per-view. So I think this is just the beginning, and I appreciate him being involved in any way on this show, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It was good to see Will Hobbs. When I say you ruined it, I mean to say I was worked and I'm mad because what I wanted to see Darby Allin have his big celebration and victory and do a lap around the ring, but instead I got Taz beating up my boy.
I told
beating
you.
up poor Darbs.
I told you they were going to do it. The Team Taz said they were going to get involved. I had a good feeling this would make the most sense in terms of where on the card they might get involved. And I think that this is a solid situation, putting Darby up against Cage, because Darby could easily be somewhat of a transitional champion. I also want to note that Cody was a bit of a transitional champion, which I said he might be. I had alluded to him potentially dropping it to Orange Cassidy, so I don't want to act like I totally saw the future. But it makes sense. And it's something else I said on Twitter tonight. Cody has a tough time against these smaller guys. He's the giant killer of AEW, and he's not necessarily even wrong about that. But when he faces the Orange Cassidys and the Darby Allins, they give him a run for his money. And I kind of like that that's consistent amongst Cody Rhodes at the very least. So I like where they've gone with that, and I think that the TNT title is in a really solid position with Darby as champion.
Yeah, totally agree there. You're right. Darby Allin could end up being a transitional champion, but I expect him to have at least a decent run. Like even if it's like until the next, not even until the next pay-per-view, just until the next big show. But because usually like they space it out like every 4 weeks or so. There's something you can look forward to, I don't want to even speculate on him being a transitional champion, though. I want to talk more about Cody being one, because you're right. You did call that, even though it was for Orange Cassidy. He basically won the title and in a matter of weeks lost it. So, good for him, man. People shit on Cody a lot, but when he needs to put somebody over, he puts somebody over. He took himself out of the world title picture. Everything he's been doing has been still phenomenal and interesting and an integral part of the show. So I don't know, just it's fucking cool to see, the WWE PTSD sinking in and getting something interesting and different with top guys.
I agree with you there, and I think that overall it's just a solid situation with Cody, and I think that we had talked about how Darby was in a position to become champion, and that would be fine, but Cody was also elevating the title, and either way he was going to elevate something tonight, either the championship or Darby, and in a way I would say he kind of elevated both because they had a solid match. We've created a good champion, and even saying Cody's a transitional champion or Darby's a transitional champion, it's not even in the natural way of like, oh, they won it for a week or 2 weeks and then dropped it. Cody's been champ probably another month or so. I don't anticipate Darby dropping it tomorrow or even Wednesday, but if he did, I wouldn't be too shocked about something like that either, to be totally honest.
No, I wouldn't.
Or even upset about it, depending on who he dropped it to. So I think that they're in a really good position with that title, especially with the world title being pretty consistent, with Mox probably going to Kenny next, and just they've done a great job with that as well. So the world title's been booked well. So far the TNT title's been booked well, but I do want to see more different champions, more frequency in the championship changing. So it's kind of perfect with that one. So I like it. We get an interview with the Natural Nightmares, just promoting their matchup on Wednesday against the Butcher and the Blade. It's going to be a bunkhouse match. I didn't know what this was until someone on Twitter asked. Apparently it's like a lights out match, but it's sanctioned. That's what I gathered from Twitter.
I googled it and it was under synonyms for hardcore match, and I was like, why even call it that?
Yeah, I guess so. That's cool. There's not a whole lot there for that, so we don't even gotta
No,
discuss
no,
it.
there's not.
It's an interesting match. The hardcore features should add an element to it for sure, but I just hope that the Natural Nightmares get beat up because
They're acting like they don't care about Allie, but they clearly cared about her a lot because it's going to be a bunkhouse match.
yes, exactly. Women that we do care about, Hikaru Shida picking up the win over Nyla Rose in 14 minutes. The match itself left a bit to be desired. I saw a little bit on social media not loving it. I'm not going to sit here and shit all over it because I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it either, though. There was a bit
Yeah,
to it
I'm
that...
about the same.
There was a bit to it that I actually did like in terms of like Hikaru Shida doing what Nyla Rose did to her. I actually also like the fact that the story explains why Nyla lost. That was something we had talked about in our hype show, was how do we book Nyla losing and her not lose momentum in the meantime. And honestly, I think they did a good job of that here. She's still new or green to wrestling, so she's naive. She thinks she's a badass, so she picks up Hikaru Shida when she probably had her beat, goes to beat her up some more, and it ends up costing her the match. So for me, it makes all the sense in the world. And of course, Hikaru Shida, she's been wrestling for so much longer. She has just a little bit more talent. So she can do that to Nyla and still pick up the win. So I think the storytelling, again, in this one was well done enough that I can't really complain too much about the rest of the match. Nyla's matches do leave me a bit like, they're just sometimes a little slow. But they are getting better, and I hope that whatever's going on with Vicky can turn into something interesting, because that was a bit awkward. I don't know if they're trying to turn Nyla face, make us feel bad for her. That was all
I don't think so.
Well, that's all I felt from that segment. So
I think they're, well, you might be right. I don't know why you would do that though.
I don't know either, unless they're just unless the alternative is like you're making her so evil, or just pushing her to a place where she will have to be like evil. You know what I mean? So
maybe like it'll be one of those situations where it's like the Young Bucks and FTR, where they're like two heels, but nobody's like a heel. I don't know.
I don't know either. This was the one moment of the show where I was a little bit like, nothing is going to happen, because I really thought if there was going to be a debut, maybe not Tessa, but I thought it would be someone in the women's division, because
I was hoping for
because
Tessa,
there's just
personally.
not a well, yeah, of course, but there's just not a whole lot of mainstream male names available in the free agent market within professional wrestling. So Tessa is kind of, I guess, what I was expecting. So when we didn't get Tessa here, I was kind of like, oh, nothing's going to happen on this show. And I wasn't necessarily mad about it, but I was like, strange. But nonetheless, I do wonder where we're going with Hikaru, because as we mentioned at the top of the show, it looks like Thunder Rosa is going for the NWA Championship. So that's at least wrapped up for right now. So where does Hikaru go on Wednesday? We'll have to see.
It's a good question. I really don't know. And I'm kind of interested in what they're going to do. I kind of hope that it's Britt Baker next, but I don't know where she is on the rankings.
But man, again, like, we're just going to keep bouncing back and forth between the same two competitors, because it was...
I don't know. You're right.
But you're right, too. So, but there could be a couple people. They could still do something with Penelope. There's definitely some women on the roster that they could elevate within a couple of weeks to do something on one of those major Dynamite episodes. So I'm not too terrified of it. Or they could always do a triple threat or something with the women's titles. So we then get a hype video for the Young Bucks versus FTR. Young Bucks picking up the victory in this one in about 28.5 minutes. I'm somewhat convinced that Matt Jackson's injury isn't going to hold him out for any time, because he wrestled a 30-minute match and won the titles. If he was going to need surgery for a potentially partially torn MCL, I don't see them holding the titles. But these are another group of guys who I could see losing on like Wednesday, and I wouldn't be mad about it. But it would be strange. What do you think of the match? It would be
strange. The match was fucking good. God damn, they really brought it. Like, this is like, so Kenny and Hangman reminded me that like there should be a crowd, and like, man, I want a crowd here. This match, even though you mentioned it being the thing that like made you think about a crowd, was it made me forget that there wasn't supposed to that there is supposed to be a crowd. I was so into this fucking thing that I kind of forgot for a moment that like yeah, there should be like fucking 30,000 fucking crazy ass people going nuts, or however many they pull in. I don't know. But I was really interested. I was really into this, man. And the only thing I didn't love about it was the ending. One, because you mentioned it in our Discord. He went for 450, and that was kind of out of character for him. I get it. He wants to rub it into the Young Bucks' face, but it was kind of like, I don't know. Anyways, and the other thing was Matt Jackson winning with a singular super kick after his like ankle had been fucked up the whole match, and hitting it with that barefoot
used all
ankle.
the force in his body for that super kick. That's what you would do in that moment, AJ. You don't realize
true.
that? Your
But
last
I'm
ditch
just saying,
effort,
usually
you're
it
gonna
takes, like,
sacrifice your
18
ankle.
super kicks from the Young Bucks.
But this, he used all the power of the 18 in one.
Okay, I'll buy
I
that.
do agree with you to an extent that the super kick was not the greatest finish, but at the same time, with his ankle being injured, he shouldn't do anything else after that. So I can't be too mad about it, especially after hitting a 450. Well, not hitting a 450, I guess you'd say. Getting the breath knocked out of you, super kick. That's enough to beat somebody, I would say. But I'm with you. Obviously, I was the one in the group chat complaining about it. It's just super out of character for FTR to do anything like that. It's one moment where I really feel like they should have been like, I get what you guys want us to do here, but that's just not us. Like, we wouldn't do it even in this sense. So that's why we shouldn't do it. But outside of that,
for all you know, it could have been their idea, but I hear what you mean.
and even
I agree.
then the Young Bucks should have been like, listen, guys,
Yeah.
that's so out of your character, because I get what it was and why they did it, but it's just because of how much FTR has been like that, to have seen it be that way in the finish. I get the storytelling aspect of it 1,000,000%, but it's just a little bit like, and that's probably just too much critique from me, like being too nitpicky of like their character, but that's my only feeling. The match itself was fun. 28 minutes of solid entertainment. Can't complain about it. Think that they definitely somewhat delivered. I think this is also another moment where they didn't give every little thing, because maybe Matt is legitimately injured and that type of situation. So there were a couple moments too where they had me fooled, where I thought they were going to pick up the victory.
Yeah.
FTR, that is. That's what I enjoyed about this as well.
And if he is legitimately injured, or if he isn't legitimately injured, either way, they were going to run this angle where he's hurt, and that was going to affect this match, because they're going to isolate him. They're going to work on this body part.
Well,
like that. That's going to be.
That's something I wanted to talk about too, in terms of maybe he's not injured, but again, of course he could be. But they spent like the first 18 minutes of the match. Well, maybe not 18, but the first half of the match just isolating Matt. And then Nick gets involved. I totally thought it would be the opposite way. I thought the story would be opposite. That Nick would be wrestling, trying to do as much as he can. Matt finally has to get in and do the work near the end. Instead, it's kind of the opposite storytelling. And that's, I guess, the potential of him being injured is why I would see them potentially dropping it in short order. If he's not seriously injured and they can keep wrestling, I don't think that they'll drop it soon. But that's the only reason that it would make sense to me, if they were just a quick transitional reign right here. But the match itself I thought was really good. I think that they did a solid job. I thought that it was very interesting the way they decided to tell the story, having Matt do the primary work in the beginning, getting worked over by FTR and that type of situation. I think Nick is great as well, so it was a great match. I mean, I don't know what else we really could have came out of Young Bucks versus FTR saying outside of the fact that it was a great match. But
I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, it wasn't good enough. Like, if we're coming across that way at all, no, that's not the case. Like, we're not that negative.
No,
this was a fucking great
match. It was a lot of fun. The finish, I think it was fine. I think people could leave something to be desired there, but I think it was solid. I think overall they did a really good job. And again, throughout this show, one of my favorite parts of it was storytelling. So I can't complain about the storytelling in FTR doing a 450, because that's what I have enjoyed about the rest of the show. The next match on the card was the one match that left a little bit to be desired, especially if you were a big fan of the Final Deletion matches themselves. This was not that. This was 19 minutes of a live version of that, I guess, based upon what I saw on Twitter. Rebby Hardy showing tweets of this match happening in real time in her backyard. I thought that was funny. I also thought some of the tweets she shared were funny. One of them said, Rebby's letting Matt get beat up right now because he didn't take out the garbage this morning. Lots of fun there on social media involving this match. The match itself, these type of matches, a cinematic experience, doesn't really fit to a live nature setting.
No.
Doesn't really fit to having the commentary over it. But I appreciate the effort. I appreciate them trying. I hope that they see where they went wrong and maybe one day try again with different cast of characters, because this just wasn't it. And I'm bummed out about that because I thought this could be Sammy's moment. But I don't even want to spend too much time on this one because I think we could spend a lot of time being overly negative about it because we were so fond of Final Deletion. And I know some people weren't even against this. A lot of people, well, I don't want to say a lot of people, but some people on social media really liked this and really enjoyed it. So I don't want to spend a ton of time just shitting all over it, but it didn't do it for me. It left a little bit to be desired. And I hope that Sammy's next feud does more for him.
I hated it, and then I stopped hating it around the time when Gangrel showed up. I was like, okay, this is getting funny. Yeah. Like, not the jokes were funny. Like, this whole match, like, whatever, if it's bad, it's bad. I don't, because the original, like, deletion matches were not, like, so mind-blowingly good that everybody was going to watch. Like, they were funny bad. Like, they were, like, stupid.
That's what almost helped this get into that territory. And this had moments of that for sure. The fireworks moment. There were a couple other moments that definitely were like that. But then the whole live nature of it too just kind of, I think, pulled it back for me. So
it like as it went on after like those big moments, it was like getting boring again, and I was just like, okay, hope somebody jumps out of the coffin. Nobody jumps out of the coffin.
And some of the some of the callback stuff in terms of like Matt busting his heart open, and then Sammy the same thing. It was kind of like almost just weird to watch, I guess.
Yeah.
So, like I said, my biggest takeaway from this one is I hope that Sammy's next feud does a little bit more for him, because this one, I don't think it held him back or brought him back. I just don't think it really accelerated what he had going on in AEW at all. But he has a ton of time to do more, so I understand why they went this direction with Matt coming out on top. But
because if anything, more damage was done to Matt by all of this than Sammy. Sammy was really comes out of this unaffected, but Matt needed a win here to look like a real competitor in AEW.
Yep. I think that it was cool getting Private Party and Santana and Ortiz involved as well. I don't think that their segments did a whole lot for me, but it was good to get them involved on the pay-per-view. And maybe we get a feud there, but at the same time, I want Matt and Sammy to now distance themselves. I want this to be the end of this feud. It's gone on long enough. It has never once really clicked, except for when Matt got smashed in the face with a chair. And that's not what you want the high point of a feud to be. So let's just keep it moving. I totally get what and I'm so glad that they tried it, because we have been begging for this. As fans of Matt Hardy, as fans of the Final Deletion thing, we begged for it. Totally didn't beg for it in this live fashion, so maybe they could give it a try in a recorded nature the way that Matt's done it before. But at the same time, with them not really hitting on a lot of that stuff, maybe it's just better to let it be what it was. So after this, we get Lance Archer. He's attacking someone. He cuts a little bit of a promo and just hyping him up. And they kind of alluded to the idea that Archer will be the next competitor for the world title directly. Kenny, obviously, the number one contender, but they had mentioned that Archer would be waiting in the shadows if Kingston won and stuff like that. So I imagine we'll get another Archer match prior to the Kenny Mox match. But I could be off.
That'd be cool. No, I'd be down with that. But I also don't see him winning, so it's also like, why bother?
Well, you have to have them. You have to have feuds that happen that.
Yeah, but I just mean like, why bother doing that? Just because it seems like it would just hurt Archer more.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. It depends on the direction they go with it directly, but for the most part, I would say that I agree that he is someone especially who could inherit that aura of just someone who can't get over the bridge or can't break through the glass ceiling. He's constantly getting world title matches and dominating the division, but when he gets championship opportunities, he's always falling short. So we get a hype video for MJF and Jericho before MJF picks up the victory over Chris Jericho. Solid match, good showcase for MJF. What do you think, AJ?
I think Jericho's losing too much. Not that I mind it. I wanted MJF to win. But as it happened, I was like, damn, Jericho's lost a lot. I was like, damn, he got beat by Orange Cassidy twice, just got beat by MJF. All the young kids are going over Jericho. Old dad Jericho's taking one for the team, like, a lot. And
that's fair, because he was dominating for a while.
It's fine, because I fully expected an MJF Jericho feud, and this wasn't even part of that. So, it was, but it wasn't really a blood feud. Like, they were sacred hands and holding each other's arms up at the end of the match. So it wasn't like, it's not like when the next pay-per-view or even further, when we see MJF and Jericho go at it, it's going to mean a lot more.
Yep.
I assume that's going to happen anyways. I don't know.
Well, and they booked the finish in an interesting way, obviously. Just going back to the whole Eddie Guerrero situation, Jericho's getting accused by the referee and then rolled up by MJF for the victory. It's a solid way for MJF to beat Jericho without actually beating Jericho. So yeah, Jericho's lost a lot, but a lot of his losses have come in like fake losses, you know what I mean? A roll up, he got dumped in the water by Orange Cassidy. So it wasn't really a big issue there. The match itself, like I said, was all right. I like where the story is going here, so it's interesting. It's just the beginning, I guess, to me. So we'll see where they go.
That's completely fair. And I have no critique about the match itself. It was perfectly fine, and it was. There was nothing wrong with it. Like, that's the best thing I could say. Like, Jericho looked great. MJF looked great. The finish was cool. The post-match stuff was cool. They put Wardlow in the inner circle, too, and made that clear, which I was glad about. I was like, what's going to happen to Wardlow? So, anyways.
And no, you're right. And it's an interesting, like I said, it's just a very interesting situation they have going on with the inner circle. It's just the beginning of this feud. You know what I mean? This is the beginning of this storyline. I imagine once we get to the next pay-per-view, things will be heating up, and probably the following pay-per-view is when we'll really be feeling it the same way we've been feeling some of these other feuds. So I think this is going to be the one to put MJF in that next category of a legitimate top-tier main event heel. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So, like I said, what could you do with this match where there's no blood feud involved? You know what I mean? They're not going to beat the shit out of each other. It's just going to be a straight down the line heel versus heel match. You're not going to get a whole lot from it. My only critique of anything on that would be, why was it so late in the card? Because there wasn't any necessary huge surprise associated with it. I think you could have put this basically anywhere on the card and it would have been okay. The only thing that I take away from that is just it's Jericho. He's the guy in AEW that's not the champion, so he gets placed as top of the card as you possibly could put him. Yeah,
that makes sense.
We got a weird interview with Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends and Nero and Kip Sabian. Yeah, I can imagine why, because it was just kind of a strange situation where Kip Sabian wants an apology from Orange Cassidy. He gets his apology, and Orange Cassidy gets slapped in the face anyway. And then Orange Cassidy's like, you know what, Best Friends, let's go. And they're like, wait, you're going to get slapped and we're going to go? And he's like, it's cool, let's go. And everyone is like, what the fuck is going on? I obviously assume on Wednesday we will get more to this. It's probably a Kip Sabian versus Orange Cassidy feud, which can probably only benefit Kip Sabian, to be honest. But that's good use of someone like Orange Cassidy, if you ask me. So
absolutely, I completely agree with you. Because right now he's in a good position to get other people over, to be perfectly honest.
At this point, and I don't think it would damage him too bad when it's someone like Kip, who I do think they have plans for in the future. I don't think he's someone who's just like a quick loser throughout the company, you know what I mean? So I think it's a solid situation there. Curious to see where it goes. Then obviously we get a hype video for the main event, Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. Jon Moxley picking up the win over Eddie Kingston in 19 minutes, finally making Kingston say I quit. Another situation of solid storytelling at the end with Bryce really wanting Eddie to just finally quit because he sees that Moxley has him in a position where there's just no out at this point. And I thought that was a very good way to do it, and nothing to complain about there. Honestly, when Eddie was in that position, I said to myself, "This is how they do it. This is how he quits." Because I was the question I constantly asked when we talked about it leading up to the match. How do you make this man say I quit? He was locked in a submission hold with barbed wire wrapped around his face and mouth. He knew he had no choice. You could almost see the tears welling up in his eyes. I could feel it as like his character, like, dang, I let my mom down. Like there's nothing I could do though, because even my boy Bryce over here is telling me I gotta quit. Like, the storytelling on that, man, is beautiful.
Really good.
It is. So, what'd you think?
Super well done, like you said. Bryce like begging him to quit, basically, like he, like, just please Eddie. Like, I was like, oh fuck, like, you gotta.
Which I kind of hated because I didn't want him to quit at that point, but I was like, fuck, you do gotta quit, man. Like,
yeah. And it was a good ending too. It was the barbed wire with the fucking bulldog choke. Like, and they took some nasty spots. My cousin actually watched this one with me, and he was like, "Do they use real barbed wire?" And I was like, "If it was other wrestlers, I would have been like, I don't know." But because it was John Moxley and Eddie Kingston, I was like, I'm absolutely fucking sure that's real barbed wire. So, like, they took some nasty ass shots here. The thumbtacks, like, were in his shoulder. Goddamn. It was not shoulder, elbow. It was messed up. They brought everything out, and it wasn't like a lights out match. It wasn't like that extreme, but
which I almost appreciate because it's not that, you know. Keep that to the nature of that. Even though I had hyped it up for myself leading up to this match of really wanting it to be that nature of deathmatch. I'm okay with the fact that it wasn't, and I don't blame them for not. Still, like keep those, like we said in the last show. Hold those off for real special moments. It felt like there were a lot of them early on. Now it's been a while. If it's even longer, it just adds to the importance of it. So
definitely, and I totally agree with that. However long they want to put off a lights out match, that's fine, unless I guess the bunkhouse brawl is going to be like, I don't fucking I the point is, this match was fucking good, and I fucking loved it. I personally liked Eddie Kingston's Masala attire. I thought that was fucking cool as shit. I know we have a friend who did not.
Big Joseph.
But I thought everything about this match was pretty fucking cool. There were even moments where I was like, damn, is Moxley gonna quit? Because fucking A. Like, this is maybe they
brutal. It was pretty
maybe
brutal.
They want Kenny to, like, not beat Moxley. I don't know. So,
yeah, I mean, Eddie could have easily been another situation of, well, we just want to do something crazy, and then on Wednesday we flip the title back or give it to someone else. This is a moment where you could potentially do something like that. The only flip side to that is if there's one other person in the company who I don't think is going to say I quit more than Kingston, it's Moxley, because they have built him up so perfectly as that babyface badass who's not going to quit. But Eddie did a great job. I think that I was very foolish in the last episode to even believe that he was legitimately going to be done with his run in the company. I think I was more so saying he might do more of a backstage role, and this was a legitimate I quit situation. I don't think it's even that either. I think this was just the nature of the match, and he'll be back in a week or so, or maybe just Wednesday, because they see the worth in Kingston. And I know he's been signed. I just, again, thought maybe he would transition more to a backstage role, but I saw in an interview that that's a big reason he didn't go to the Fed, so it would make sense that that's not going to happen. And he had a great showing here. Maybe he'll take some time off to sell the injuries, but who's not going to be selling injuries is Moxley, because post-match, Kenny Omega comes out, he grabs a tack, he grins and stares Moxley down, and just good storytelling there as well. This is a feud that has been brewing. We talked about how it was a year ago, literally, when they had that match, right? That's when they had the Lights Out match. So solid storytelling in the sense of they got back to it a year later. They let those guys go off and do their separate things and sort of make stars on their own. Moxley helping build up the Archers and the Brody Lees.
MJF even.
And MJF even. And Kenny Omega making Hangman a legitimate star. And doing the same with some other guys along the way as well. It's been a good year for these guys, and now we're about to get the match. When it happens, hopefully it's going to be at a pay-per-view. But I'm ready for Kenny to be champ, man. I'm as much as I wanted Hangman to win that match because we're fans of Hangman. I've been a Kenny Omega fan for years since we watched the Okada match, since before that even. So as a fan of Omega, I'm ready for him to be champion of the company that I'm the biggest fan of, and hopefully we're getting there. And so that's something I'm excited about as well. And I think that's when we'll get some of the best matches. So I think they delivered with a phenomenal show, but I think it's very great that in delivering with a phenomenal show, they have set the tone to deliver with another phenomenal show, because the main event for that one is already good enough. You know, this one, the main event was lacking a little bit, but we had dream matches to compensate for that. Next show, the main event is already so good that they could do whatever they want with the rest of the card, to be honest, and it's already a sold pay-per-view. It's kind of genius.
Like you said, I'm so fucking ready for Kenny Omega to be champion. Like, absolutely, now is the time to do this.
Yep. I think that it's definitely the time. I think that Mox's run as champion has been great, solidified him as the guy in the company. But you know who was the guy in the company before Mox ever signed? Kenny Omega. So now it's time for guy versus guy. I'm so excited for it. I think that, like, again, this pay-per-view really set the tone for that. It set the tone for the tag team division as well. Even the women's division, to an extent, has been elevated. They've at least added some depth to it, you could say. And all divisions, TNT title, very well set as well. So I think it's very interesting, and they even mentioned it, maybe not in the show itself, but it might have been in some of the Cody hype videos I was watching earlier today. There's a lot of talent not involved on this card who are very great as well. The Pox and other talent like that. So I think that's a great sign for where AEW's at. They've delivered another great pay-per-view. Nothing to complain about there. So I'm excited, and I think that Wednesday will be a solid Dynamite. I don't necessarily know if there's a whole lot there that's really crazy.
Well, you have Phoenix and
you're right.
Penta, so that's enough to get me to watch it. And I mean, not that I'm gonna watch it fucking anyways, obviously, but that's enough to get me interested, man. You can have my dimes for that.
Yeah, and we'll just run through the whole card for Wednesday real quick before we get out of here. I think they only added one more match, but we talked about the Butcher and the Blade versus the Natural Nightmares in a bunkhouse match. Penta versus Rey Fenix, number 2, and then Tay Conti taking on Red Velvet. So I do find a little bit of interest in that one, just because Brandy obviously mentoring Red Velvet, and then Tay Conti being aligned with Anna Jay in the Dark Order. There's a little bit of storytelling to that, I think. So again, some stories to be told on Dynamite, and I always appreciate that. So
yeah,
I think that they delivered a solid pay-per-view. Dynamite will probably be good. So I think we've covered everything. AJ, you want to let people know where they can find you, and we can get out of here?
For sure. You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And you can follow the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/AllElitePod. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/AllElitePodcast. And if you're watching us there, make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. You can find us on Twitter at AllElitePodcast. We're on Instagram at AllElitePod. You can find me on Twitter at Upstate Andrew, and on Instagram at Andrew Kazir. Thank you guys for always supporting the podcast, tuning in, sharing, all of that great stuff. Until Thursday,